The galaxy knew her as the Queen of Death, destroyer of fleets, breaker of worlds, a name children whispered to keep the lights on. But when she stormed into her war chamber that morning, ready to condemn traitors and crush rebellion, she didn't expect to find her daughter wobbling on two wheels, with a human janitor gently steadying the seat. No guards, no court, just laughter. And in that strange moment, for the first time in decades, the Queen didn't speak because she didn't know how to. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from: planet, city, or command sector. And if stories like this one stir something in you, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's The war chamber aboard the dreadnought Galaxies Prime was carved from starbone and veined with warlight. It had held the screams of dying diplomats, the thunder of verdicts that ended civilizations, and the cold, mechanical clink of weapons being polished for conquest. It was not a place for children. It was a place where empires decided whose skies would burn next. But today, instead of execution orders or plasma briefings, the sound that echoed off the obsidian floor was a squeaky metallic screech, the kind made by a tiny, poorly balanced training wheel skipping on steel tiles. And it stopped everyone in their tracks. Guards in crimson armor froze mid-step. Aid drones stalled mid-hover, as if their sensors had glitched. Even the ambient AI dimmed its humming. Because there, in the middle of the floor, once drenched in blood rites, was a child, not just any child, but the child. The heir to the throne of 9 griefs, the daughter of the Queen of Death. And she was wobbling, wide-eyed and determined, on a tiny bike that was far too Earth-like for comfort. Behind her, crouched low in worn brown boots and a faded blue utility vest, was a man no one had ever paid much attention to before. His face was sun-worn, human, unremarkable except for the warmth in his eyes. One hand gripped the back of the bike seat, the other floated just beside her shoulder, ready to catch without crowding. He didn't speak. He just moved with the calm patience of someone who'd taught this lesson before. The girl, glowing faintly violet in the chamber's pale blue light, squealed with delight as she pedaled forward a few shaky inches. Then the bike tilted, then steadied. The man let out the softest chuckle, not mocking, but proud, and gently guided her forward again. That's when the doors at the far end of the hall hissed open with a sound like splitting ice. The Queen stepped in. The air didn't change, it tightened. Her presence hit like pressure in the skull. 7 feet tall, armored in living gold and crimson, her skin a slate blue shimmer like frozen thunderclouds, and her eyes, those infamous eyes, burning with silver light. The guards dropped to one knee. The AI dimmed to reverent hush. Even the child's bike squeaked to a stop, as if the machine itself remembered who it belonged to. But the janitor didn't kneel. He didn't run. He didn't even look up. Instead, he crouched beside the bike and steadied the handlebars again. "You ready to try again?" he asked, voice soft. The Queen of Death did not speak. She simply stared, not at him, at her daughter, the little violet flame she had hidden from the universe, wobbling on 2 wheels in the middle of a war chamber, learning balance not from simulations, not from royal tutors, but from the man whose name no one had ever bothered to learn. And for the first time in decades, the Queen didn't know what to say. He was listed in the crew manifest as E. Carter, Class C sanitation, assigned to the lower quadrants of Galaxies Prime. No rank, no clearance. Just a jumpsuit, a mop, and a toolbox older than most recruits. No one asked where he came from. No one cared. He unclogged coolant ducts, patched plasma leaks, and scraped war residue from titanium bulkheads. He was invisible. That was the job. But the girl saw him. The first time she snuck out, ducking past retinal scans, and slipping through a broken service panel, she found him alone in the lower engine corridor, coaxing a cracked valve back to life with the kind of tenderness usually reserved for lullabies. He didn't yell, didn't report her. He just looked up, offered her a half-smile and said, "You lost or just hiding?" She didn't answer, not with words. She just sat and watched him work, wide eyes tracking every movement, like it was spellcraft. When the pipe stopped hissing and the corridor lights flickered back to life, she whispered, "Why do you fix things?" He paused then, wiped his hands. "Because somebody has to." That was the start. She visited again the next day, and the next. always slipping through the gaps, always watching. At first he pretended not to notice. Then he started leaving a small wrench set on the floor beside him. One day, she picked it up, fumbled with a bolt, dropped it. He smiled. Good start. By the third week, she was helping him tighten panels and rewire burnt circuits. She never told him her name. He never asked. But he started calling her kid, and she never corrected him. In his world of grime and gearboxes, of rusted systems made to work longer than they should, she wasn't the Empress's heir. She was just a curious little girl with nimble fingers and a laugh that bounced off the metal walls like hope echoing. No security cams recorded these meetings. The Queen's Palace AI didn't log her route. Somehow, every system failed to track her movements. Whether by will or glitch, she existed in his space as something real, unmonitored, unmeasured, unroyal. Then one day, she saw a broken thing he couldn't fix. It was an old hoverboard warped, wheels rusted, battery long dead, a relic from some forgotten warfront colony. She dragged it to him with wide eyes and a hopeful grin. "Can we make it work again?" He turned it over, studied the parts, and shook his head. "Nah." But he opened a side compartment in his toolkit, pulled out something older, simpler, 2 wheels, pedals, a frame of metal and memory. She tilted her head. "What is it?" He ran his hand along the frame like he was remembering something he hadn't touched in years. "It's called a bike." "Is it broken?" He smiled. "Not yet." The first time she tried to ride it, she fell sideways and nearly cracked a coolant pipe. He caught her before she hit the floor, not like a guard would, not with protocol or hesitation, but with the reflex of someone who'd caught a child before, maybe long ago, maybe on a planet that didn't exist in the official maps anymore. He didn't scold her, didn't call security. He just righted the bike, brushed off her scraped elbow, and said, "Lean into the turn next time, don't fight it." She blinked at him, then nodded. Her next fall left a tiny bruise on her shin. He offered her a strip of thermal tape and a piece of chewing gum. She took both like they were sacred relics. And each time she got back on, her balance improved, wobbly circles becoming ovals, ovals becoming loops, laughter starting to replace the gritted determination. He started showing her tricks. Not stunts, not the kind you see in zero-G entertainment arenas. Just the basics. How to coast without pedaling, how to stop without toppling, how to trust the wheels. She asked once how he knew all this. "I had a daughter once," he said quietly. Just that. She didn't press. She never asked again. The warship had no parks, no breeze, no sunlight, just halls that hummed with the pulse of conquest. So he found a forgotten space deep in the old maintenance wing, a wide, echoing room once used for drone calibration, now filled with dust and silence. He cleaned it slowly over 3 days, sweeping debris into piles, resetting light panels, rewiring safety buffers. And when she rolled her bike across that floor for the first time, it was as if the ship itself held its breath. Rubber tires squeaked softly. A child's laugh ricocheted off steel. She was glowing again, literally, faint violet pulses rippling down her arms. He'd learned to ignore it. She was a different kind of being, not quite flesh, not quite light. But when she smiled, the kind of crooked grin where 2 front teeth hadn't fully grown in, he forgot about power signatures and bio readings. She was just a kid on a bike. And then, she crashed. Not a hard one, but enough to tip her sideways, enough for her palms to hit the floor and her knees to sting. She didn't cry, not at first. She just sat there, breathing fast, blinking hard. He crouched beside her. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" She nodded, then shook her head. "I failed." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out an old patch, frayed and faded. It read, "Carter's Garage, Estemayan 2094. He pressed it into her tiny hand. "We don't fail. We learn." She stared at it, then at him. And this time, when she stood up, she got back on the bike without a word. In that moment, deep inside a ship designed to conquer solar systems, the heir to the Queen of Death learned something no war council had ever taught: how to fall and how to rise. She had mastered straight lines. That was easy. But the corners, the turns, those still made her panic. The moment the bike curved, her hands clutched the grips too tight, her tiny frame stiffened like a soldier bracing for blast recoil. He saw it each time. Her shoulders locked, eyes wide, feet poised to leap off. And every time, he'd jog beside her, hands steady on the seat, voice low and even. Don't fight the turn. Let it take you. Trust the lean. But what if I fall? Then I'll catch you. They practiced every morning in the forgotten chamber, the warship's sleep cycle cloaking their sessions in an artificial twilight. The air always smelled faintly of oil and ozone. Above them, massive pipes whispered with the engine's pulse, the same rhythm the janitor followed as he ran beside her, matching her wobble with grace honed from years of quiet repetition. By the fourth morning, she leaned, just slightly. Not a deep carve, not yet, but enough to take the curve without bailing. He didn't cheer, he just nodded. Good, her grin could have cracked stars. He stepped back that day. Just a few feet. Let her loop the chamber once without his hand on the seat. She wobbled. She overcorrected. But she didn't fall. And when she came around the second loop and saw him waiting with arms crossed, pretending not to smile, she veered toward him, squeezed the brakes, and skidded gently to a stop. Did you see that? I didn't blink. She laughed, really laughed, the kind that echoed through the corridor and made a maintenance drone peek around the corner as if the sound was a malfunction. The janitor gave it a wave. The drone buzzed in confusion and disappeared. That night, as he stashed the bike back in his tool closet beneath a tarp of faded canvas, he found something small tucked into the handlebars, a hand-drawn symbol scrawled in violet ink, shimmering faintly. A spiral, encircled by 3 dots. He didn't recognize it, but when he pressed it to his palm, it pulsed once with warmth. He didn't ask her about it, just folded the paper and tucked it into the inside pocket of his vest, beside an old photo of a girl he hadn't seen in years. He didn't see the Queen watching that time. Hidden high above, in a surveillance alcove she never used, she stood like a statue carved from vengeance, motionless, silent, but her fingers trembled, because the spiral and the 3 dots, that wasn't just a drawing. It was a glyph, a royal one, an ancient symbol reserved for naming those bound by soul instead of blood. And her daughter had given it to the janitor. She did not descend right away. She watched, high above in the stillness of a chamber that had once been her father's. The surveillance feed was muted, the color filters disabled. She wanted no interference, no enhancement, only truth. And the truth was harder to absorb than any battlefield report. The janitor, the one her systems had flagged years ago as non-threatening, emotionally unremarkable, knelt beside her daughter with a patience that eclipsed any formal education. He was teaching, not just mechanics, but presence, gentleness, that strange, distinctly human rhythm of being there, without fanfare, without reward. He helped her fix the chain when it slipped. He let her fall once, even though he could have prevented it, not out of cruelty, but trust. And when she cried, not from pain but from frustration, he didn't try to fix her tears. He just sat beside her and said nothing until the silence calmed her. The Queen clenched her jaw, her armor flexed with her muscles alive, reactive, imperial. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't safe. Her daughter was the inheritor of an empire that ruled through precision and command, through legacy and calculated mercy. There were rules, rituals, expectations, and yet, here she was, barefoot on alloy floors, hair mussed from motion, cheeks flushed with joy, learning something no curriculum offered: how to trust a stranger, how to try, how to be weak and laugh through it. The Queen saw something else too. In the janitor's movement, the way he adjusted the seat, the way he rubbed his thumb across the bike's frame like it was sacred, there was history, muscle memory. This wasn't his first student. He had done this before. She ran a silent scan of his record. Name: Elijah Carter, former colonist, widow, 1 daughter, deceased. No criminal record, no military service. Transferred to Galaxies Prime 10 cycles ago, after petitioning for low-profile civilian placement, a ghost in plain sight, and her daughter had found him. The Queen descended 2 levels that evening. Not all the way, just enough to walk the outer rim of the maintenance wing and listen. She heard laughter, the scrape of tires, the clang of a dropped wrench. She stopped at a sealed bulkhead and placed one hand on the cold metal. It was foolish, she knew, to allow this to continue. Dangerous, even. The optics alone, air consorting with a human male of no station, unauthorized access to military-grade interiors, breach of formal etiquette. It was her duty to put a stop to it, and yet, she turned, walked away, and said nothing. She didn't cancel his access. She didn't summon her daughter. She didn't send the guards. Instead, she returned to her private chamber, unfastened the crown of thorns, a ceremonial piece older than memory, and placed it silently on the mantel, because for the first time in decades, her daughter had laughed like she meant it. And the Queen didn't want to be the one who made it stop. Elijah Carter never told anyone his full name. Not because he was hiding, he just assumed no one cared to know. His jumpsuit bore only a patch that read Carter in faded white thread, half peeling at the edges from too many reactor wash cycles. Most officers called him custodian. Some said scrubber. A few just barked noises when they wanted something cleaned. He answered them all, not out of submission but out of habit. He wasn't there to make noise. He was there to fix things quietly. But children ask questions, adults don't. "What's that scar from?" the girl had asked once, mid-ride, after catching a glimpse of the pale mark beneath his right ear. He'd hesitated, then shrugged. Got caught under a broken conduit. She had stared at it longer than he liked, then whispered, "It looks like the crescent mark on the old books in the East Library." He had smiled at that. "You've read those?" She nodded proudly. "Only the forbidden ones." He laughed, but inside, something twisted. Because he had seen that mark before, not just on books, but on flags, on walls, on armor plates. The same crescent had once adorned his daughter's jacket when she was still alive, when she used to zip through the rustlands of Lyra 7 on a half-busted hoverboard, racing the wind. The same mark was carved into the ruins he buried her in, a memory etched into stone and silence. After her death, he'd gone silent too. Not in grief, he'd passed through that long ago, but in choice. He gave up the names, gave up the stories, put on a jumpsuit, boarded a long-haul cargo line, and took the first job that asked nothing of him but sweat. And for 10 cycles, no one asked, until this girl, the Empress's heir, who saw past the mop handle and into something older. That same day, as he scrubbed the floor just outside the ship's fusion vaults, 2 of the Queen's elite guards passed by tall reptilian creatures with polished helmets and laser batons strapped to their backs. One sneered, "Still scraping the floor, human?" Elijah didn't look up. "Still marching in circles?" The other stepped forward, armored fingers twitching toward his weapon. "Say that again." He didn't, but before either could move, a third figure stepped into the corridor. The girl, hands on hips, head tilted in royal defiance. "Is there a reason you're threatening my custodian?" she asked, her voice small but slicing. The guards stilled. One bowed clumsily. The other muttered an apology. She didn't wait for them to leave. Just walked straight up to Elijah, grabbed his sleeve, and pointed at a grease-smudged bolt in the floor. "This one's loose. Can we fix it?" He nodded, smiling faintly. "Yeah, we can." As they knelt together, he didn't notice the Queen watching from the shadows again. But this time, her gaze wasn't just curiosity. It was memory. Because that mark on his neck, the one her daughter had noticed, matched a symbol she'd once seen scrawled on the war maps of a rebel group that vanished decades ago. A group known not for their weapons, but for their mercy, and their motto, "Fix what the Empire forgets." The maintenance wing had no stars, just flickering ceiling strips and the dull glow of recycled air. But when she rode arms steady, eyes locked ahead, tires squeaking over metal, the girl looked like she was chasing constellations only she could see. By now, she could ride full loops without falling. Could coast, could stop, could spin the handlebars just enough to draw a wide circle before braking. She invented games as she pedaled, dodging imaginary asteroids, weaving through invisible laser fire, saving silent galaxies with every turn. Elijah just watched. He didn't shout praise, didn't clap, just watched like a craftsman marveling at something that no longer needed his hand to stay upright. But one morning, she rode differently, slower, focused, intent, and then she did something strange. She lifted one hand off the handlebars just for a moment and pressed it flat to her chest as she passed him. Then she looked at him and said, "Watch." She turned the corner with her hand still there, body tilted, wind catching the loose strands of her hair. No wobble, no panic, just movement. And when she came back around, she drew something in the air with that same hand, a motion he couldn't quite decode, a swirl with 3 quick taps at the end. He blinked. "What was that?" he asked. She grinned. "It's a glyph." "For what?" "For change," she said. "The old kind. The kind you feel before it happens." He laughed softly. "You're making these up, aren't you?" She shrugged. "Someone has to." What he didn't know, what she wouldn't say, was that the glyph she drew had been recorded only once before, centuries ago, in a prophecy spoken by a dying star mother. When the wheel spins in silence, and the air draws the sign of shift upon steel, the throne shall bend before the low, and stars will pause to listen. It was carved into a tablet, locked away in the royal vaults. A tablet the queen had read as a girl, and dismissed as poetic nonsense. But now, she wasn't so sure. Because the next time her daughter rode, the queen did not watch from behind security glass. She stood in the open, veiled, silent, half-shadowed. She watched her child loop and coast and laugh. She watched the janitor lean against a pipe, arms folded, saying nothing, content to witness. And she felt something inside her chest, something tight, rusted, ancient, begin to bend. Later that cycle, an envoy from the tribunal passed through the dreadnought, a formality, a status check. They asked about the heir. "She is training," the queen said. They asked, "With whom?" "A quiet man," she said. They chuckled politely. "A noble? A warrior?" The queen paused. "No," she said. "Something older." The envoy didn't understand. But the queen did. Because power wasn't always inherited in crowns. Sometimes it rode in circles across a forgotten hall, humming with joy. And sometimes it wore a janitor's boots. The dream began again that night. The queen saw fire, not the kind from war or conquest, but the quiet kind, the kind from a hearth she could no longer remember. A small flame, a wooden floor, the creak of a rocking chair, and a voice. Low, male, human. Hold her steady. Let her feel the weight. That's how you teach balance, not by controlling it, but by showing it can be trusted. She woke in her chamber, armored robes discarded across the balcony rail, her pulse unsteady. It had been over 40 years since she'd heard that voice. Elijah Carter had never been in the Empire's bloodlines, but he had been near them once, part of a treaty that was buried so deep it had its own gravity. Back then, he wasn't a janitor, he was a mediator, a translator, a man whose rare skill wasn't language, but listening. And then the treaty failed. A planet fell, and the queen had watched his face as it happened, not in fury, but in a grief so deep it swallowed noise. That was the last time she'd seen him, until her daughter rode a circle of hope across war steel and called him mine with every pedal. She didn't summon him formally. That wasn't her way. She simply walked the length of the ship until she reached the hall he cleaned. He was scrubbing a coolant spill. Alone. No music. No audience. "You remember me?" she said. He didn't look up right away. "I remember a lot of things," he said, standing slowly, placing the mop aside like a staff that had done its duty. She studied him, the scar by his jawline, the graying hair, the calm behind his eyes. "You knew who she was the moment she walked in." He nodded. "You didn't report it?" "No," he said. "Why?" He hesitated. Then, "Because she was a child, and she wanted to ride." The queen exhaled, not a sigh, not a release, but something heavier. She stepped forward, stopped a meter away. "She gave you a glyph," she said. "Do you know what it means?" "No," he said, "but I've been called worse." She almost smiled. "Almost. Elijah," she said for the first time. "Do you know why we keep burying our best in dirt and calling them janitors?" He tilted his head. "To make sure they still clean the floor even after they've cleaned the stars." Silence stretched between them. Then she reached into her robe and withdrew a small, flat object, black, glossy, ancient. She handed it to him. He turned it over in his palm. A data slate. She said only one thing. "Your name is still listed on the original Meridian Accords." His fingers tightened around it. He looked at her, no longer as custodian or monarch, but as equals who had both lost more than the galaxy would ever know. "I didn't come here to rise," he said. "No," the queen replied. "But someone has to remind us what standing actually means." And for the first time in her reign, she bowed her head. The queen's kneel was not dramatic. There was no thunder, no gasping crowd, no ceremonial horn blaring from the bridge. She simply inclined her head. 1 second of reverence. 1 second that rewrote the balance of power aboard Galaxies Prime. Elijah stood still. He didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't speak. Just looked at her, not as a ruler bowing, not as a monarch faltering, but as a mother finally recognizing the hands that had caught her daughter when the galaxy wasn't watching. "Your generals won't like this," he said softly. "They rarely like what makes sense," she replied. Footsteps echoed across the corridor. 2 of her advisors approached, both dressed in ceremonial armor so polished it reflected the overhead lights like mirrors. They halted abruptly at the sight, their queen kneeling, the janitor standing. Their eyes darted to one another. One stepped forward, trying to hold protocol together like cracked glass. "My queen, this man is beneath." She raised one hand. He silenced instantly. "You see him now," she said coldly. "But he was always there." "But what is he?" the other whispered. "What is this?" The queen stood slowly, taller than before, somehow, not because she had reclaimed her authority, but because she had realigned it. "He is Meridian." That name rippled through the corridor like a forgotten hymn. Soldiers stiffened, tech officers froze mid-task. Even the warship's neural interface dimmed its pulse for half a heartbeat. "Elijah Carter," she said aloud now, for all to hear, "was present when the first treaties were forged. His hands held the original seal. He is not a custodian of pipes. He is a custodian of memory." The janitor turned away from the corridor, from the confusion, from the crown. He walked toward the small storage closet at the end of the hall, opened it, and wheeled the child's bike into the light. And then she appeared, the girl, wearing goggles slightly too big for her face and a smile slightly too wide for the moment. "Did I miss something?" she asked, gripping the handlebars. "No," Elijah said. "You're right on time." He crouched, tightened one of the pedals, and looked up at her. "You want to show them?" She nodded. He stood, looked back toward the queen, and said, "Give us space." She stepped back. Her advisors followed reluctantly, awkwardly, uncertain how to stand in the presence of a child about to ride in the shadow of a throne. The girl mounted the bike. Elijah gave it one gentle push. She pedaled, not wobbly, not afraid. A perfect loop around the war chamber. Tires squeaked. Laughter soared. One of the officers whispered, "What is this supposed to prove?" The queen didn't answer him. She just watched her daughter ride and whispered a truth so ancient it burned her throat. "She's free." The great observatory of Galaxies Prime had never been used for ceremony. It was designed for surveillance, for long-range scans, for pinpointing the next system to bend or burn. But today, its floor was cleared, its sensors dimmed, its curved glass dome opened wide to the stars, not for targeting, but for witnessing. The queen stood at its edge, no crown on her head, just the silver strands of her hair catching starlight. Behind her, advisors fidgeted, guards fumed, and diplomats whispered into data slates, trying to decide if what they were watching was rebellion or revelation. At the center of the chamber, the girl pedaled, a smooth, steady circle. No drones flanked her, no AI corrected her balance, no symphonies of empire played in the background, only the squeak of wheels, the soft rhythm of breath, and the faint voice of Elijah Carter, standing off to the side, calling out, "Keep it steady, lean into it." It was unsanctioned, unadvised, unprecedented, and yet it was perfect. She laughed loud, proud, wild, and somewhere, in 100 worlds across the system, that laugh echoed, not by sound, but by signal. Because the observatory feed had been left on, intentionally or by fate, the entire galaxy was watching. They saw no declaration, no conquest, no royal gesture. They saw a girl on a bike, the daughter of the Queen of Death, riding, and the man beside her not kneeling, not serving, but present, steady, real. A message flashed in from the outer ring colonies. Is this a ritual? Another from the rebel outpost on Gliese 9. Is the child free? The queen did not answer them. She didn't need to, because when the girl completed her last loop, dismounted, and ran to Elijah with her arms outstretched, no one saw a child of war. No one saw a symbol of power. They saw someone who had learned, the kind of learning that rewrites systems, not with lasers, but with balance, with trust. Elijah lifted her effortlessly, spun her once, and laughed with her, not because she was royalty, but because she rode. The queen stepped forward then, slowly. Her advisors held their breath, fearing a reprimand. Instead, she bent not a bow, not a political gesture, just enough to press her palm gently to Elijah's shoulder. "Thank you," she said. He didn't answer with words. He just nodded, the way men do when the work is done and their hands still remember the weight of it. The girl looked up at her mother. "Can I ride again tomorrow?" The queen knelt beside her. "Every day you wish." The stars blinked overhead. A janitor, a bike, a child. That's all it took to make the galaxy pause. And in that pause, something new was born. Not an empire, not a revolt, but a rhythm, a hope, a future that for once didn't begin with a throne, but with a push and two wheels rolling forward.